Welcome, everybody. It's an urgent / emergency live stream because of the things that are breaking in the news right now. We're going to dive straight into it. You can see it there on your screen. A Minneapolis church called City's Church was invaded today by protesters, and we've got the story on that for you. Also, as you can see there on your screen, 1,500 active duty soldiers are being readied for possible deployment to Minnesota. That would be, I would assume, in response to the Insurrection Act, if it was to be enacted. Summer, welcome to the show.
Hey, Brad, it's good to be here. Sunday night, kind of rare for us to be on, but we just felt like we needed to come on and talk about some things.
Yeah, Summer's idea. She said, let's go on there and tell the people what's happening. We'll start right here with let me get my share back here. Attaboy, Brad. Yeah, okay, so this person is known as I don't know if that's the video, if that's the person who's posting the video over here on X. I don't know if that's the person who's doing it. No, they're criticizing it. Okay, so what I'll do is I'll let you hear what it was like from the perspective of one of the so-called protesters. Here we go.
As you can see, all these pretend Christians, all these comfortable white people who are living lavish, comfortable.
Do you have that audio?
Yes, I can hear it.
Okay, good. Sorry.
Lives while children are dragged into concentration camps. You're living real life, nice lives with your lattes, doing absolutely nothing for your Latino and Somali brothers and sisters. You come here to a man wearing a suit. Is a preacher? Did Jesus wear a suit? Did Jesus profit off the words? No! Jesus would die within you. You do not touch me. Touch me again and see what happens. Hey, you can't. You are a fake Christian. Why are you not standing with your Somali and Latino communities? Why do I not see you out at Whipple every day protesting this attack on humanity? Where are you? You're sinners. You're pretending to be Christians. But we know you live an easy life, don't you? A very easy life while people are starving. Shame. Out now. Out now. Living real comfortable while the people starve. Living real comfortable while children are dragged into concentration camps. You're all living real comfortable, aren't you? Shame on you. Do something. Stand with the Somalis. Stand with the Latinos. Quit ignoring this injustice. He wears a suit and tie and he hangs out with Kristi Noem. How is that a Christian? You're supposed to accept all immigrants, are you not? Why are you not going down to Whipple and joining us in protest against this inhumanity? You claim to be a Christian, act like one.
Okay, well, there you go. Did that audio come through okay there, Summer?
I believe it did.
Okay. Yeah. So anyway, if you did hear what this fellow was,
what this activist had to say.
This activist, paid, who knows? People are today have been so trained throughout their lives to be activists that you really don't even have to pay many of them anymore. You just have to get a few there to get them riled up.
But he did say some pretty specific things, So what came to my mind with this was Operation Topple the Status Quo, oppressor versus oppressed, all the shaming, the inversion of morality going on, and making these people feel like they were bad, they were sinners.
Yeah, let me show you this clip. What you're saying there, I have this clip here of the person who is telling everyone that that's what they're there to do, given the name of the operation. Check this out.
Tell us, why are you doing this?
This is Operation Pull Up, more of a clandestine operation. We show up somewhere that is a key location. They don't expect us to come there. And then we disrupt business as usual. So that's what we're about to go do right now.
Tell us, why are you doing this?
This is Operation Pull Up, more of a clandestine operation. We show up somewhere that is a key location. They don't expect us to come there. And then we disrupt business as usual. So that's what we're about to go do right now.
Tell us, why are you doing this?
All right,
This is
so there you
Operation
go.
Pull Up, more of a clandestine
Once
operation.
again.
We show up somewhere that is a key location. They don't expect us to come there. And then we disrupt business as usual. So
Right.
Right.
But we know that this comes down to liberating tolerance, right? What we learned about Herbert Marcuse, that anything that is status quo or tradition is considered to be the enemy. So they want to come and attack that. That's about attacking our way of life and about destabilizing the culture.
Yeah, so this is Nikema Levy Armstrong. She is a civil rights attorney who played a role in hijacking a church service in Minneapolis this morning, which is a federal offense. Right, you're not allowed to interrupt any religious service. Now, that could work against us too, but in this sense, you know, the spirit of that law, of course, was to protect worship in the church. She called it clandestine Operation Pull Up. Sounds like a diaper operation, but that's not what it was. Apparently, this was a planned, as she said, roll up in there and interrupt business as usual. Tweet here says racial civil rights seem to be a thing of the past for her, and is now working with a 501c3 called Democracy Now! There we go. Once again, Democracy Now! Used to be a libertarian stronghold for, you know, exposing the ways of corrupt government. Amy Goodman is the, I think maybe the founder of that. She was one of the first, and she's still, as far as I know, reporting for them. They have really shifted off of their purpose. Funded by the usual big giants. Says here, what this activist group did in the church today was beyond illegal and must be held accountable. It's true. It is beyond illegal by man's law. Now you're getting into some other kind of a deeper sort of punishment. Here's another look from inside.
It's shameful to interrupt a public gathering of Christians in worship.
So this is the pastor, and he is David Easterwood, because this fellow here who had all the opinions about what Christianity is or should be posted it on his or in his video. David Easterwood's racist church that supports Christianism. Amazing at how these people can hold two completely opposed positions on morality in their mind, such contradicting worldviews at the same time. Selective justice. He's talking about justice. He's crying out for justice. He gives you his opinion on what he thinks justice is, but he's confused. He has no idea. To him, he has been trained as an activist to believe that justice is whatever I feel like it is right now. If it goes against my individual autonomy, then it's unjust. No restraint, right, Summer? That's what in many of your articles, the point has been that any insult to my urges is injustice.
Yes.
This is the pastor giving an interview here.
But there were folks who will say, I have to take care of my flock. Okay, but listen, we live in there's a constitution in the First Amendment to freedom of speech and freedom to.
By the way, this is Don Lemon back again, also known as Don Lemon. He showed up in Minneapolis today, very proud of himself to be there. Just so happened to be there where they invaded the church, shut down the service, to make their points. And now he's crying about constitutional rights as they stand there breaching constitutional rights. People think that free speech or the right or the right to protest means that you can do whatever you want. You can protest wherever, however you want. There's no limitation to it. You can't break other laws. You can't violate other. Constitutional rights.
Assemble and protest.
We're here to worship. We're here to worship Jesus because that. It's shameful to interrupt a public gathering of Christians in worship. So,
But there were folks who will.
I have to take care of my flock.
Okay, but listen, we live in there's a constitution in the First Amendment to freedom of speech and freedom to assemble and protest.
And there you go. That's what he believes. I hope you're able to hear this, folks. My audio on my end is just all over the place. But Don Lemon is saying here that people have a right to protest. You don't have a right to protest and violate the rights of other people as you do it. That doesn't make your right doesn't supersede the other person's right.
Again, it's the idea of telling the truth falsely and being right wrongly. So that's what they're masters of. That's how they are systems change disruptors. They are chaos agents because they go around and just like Satan, they use language as a weapon, and they'll say things in ways that are very deceptive, that sort of work around the loopholes just so that they can come in and sound morally enough. They can sound moral enough to where it's confusing for people, because it makes them think that they have some sort of moral high ground, when in reality, they're just there to twist the reality of what's actually taking place and happening. And it's all about destabilization. And honestly, it's very aggressive and it's bullying. And again, this is about coming after the status quo. So what did they do? They decided to go inside of a church. That's a very Marxian operation thing to do. Disrupt the status quo. Tell those people that they're not doing enough, that they're not being real Christians.
I think I have a better look at that also. Here we go. This might be a little better look at it. Maybe the audio is better. Who knows? But there's a better look at it anyway.
Of Christians in worship. So,
But there were folks who will.
I have to take care of my flock.
Okay, but listen, we live in there's a constitution in the First Amendment to freedom of speech. I want to be very respectful. Please don't push me.
We're here to worship Jesus. That's why we're here. Okay, that's why we're here. That's what we're about.
Do you think Jesus would be understanding and
we're about
love these folks?
We're about.
There's a lot of interesting and actually very good questions that have come up from Don Lemon and from Prince or whoever. That's not his name. And this guy. Wouldn't Jesus love these immigrants? Wouldn't he love them? I mean, how can you be a Christian and want these immigrants to be disappeared and removed? And of course, we covered this in one of our live streams earlier, and I'll talk about it again here in just a minute. But this is such a twisted view of what justice is. They have no understanding of who Jesus is and what Jesus actually said and taught. Yes, love your neighbor. Yes, but how do you love your neighbor? Truth, law, respect. Just because someone has the status of a migrant doesn't give them a higher standing. Particularly, as the pastor said here, it's his duty to protect his flock against, these are not immigrants that are coming into this, as far as I know. These are just protesters that came into their church. Are you supposed to see? And that's I almost said it out loud, because I almost fell into the trap. The question is not about love here. The question is about law. And who is the lawgiver? Who has determined what the law is? In the United States of America, the moral law is the foundation of the Constitution. That means God's law is the foundation of the Constitution. You can argue that if you want, but the founders seem to know it very well. Okay, let's jump in here and look at this one. This is Jake Lang, I think it is, Summer.
Can I just say one more time about the logic of liberating
Yeah, go
tolerance?
ahead.
Yeah, the logic of liberating tolerance. So Herbert Marcuse, we've talked a lot about him, but just think about that in terms of what you just saw transpire with those clips in the church in Minnesota. So the logic of liberating tolerance underpins modern justifications for deplatforming, speech codes, ideological gatekeeping in institutions, and the claim that restricting certain beliefs is necessary to protect the vulnerable or advance justice. So, again, we've talked about how we're in this war between we're living in two different operating systems. The people that subscribe to God's law and moral order, and then the people that subscribe to this Marxist woke ideology who are driven by their particular worldview of justice. It's social justice versus biblical justice. And these two worldviews are colliding. And so in their view, it's the idea of liberating tolerance. This is a concept that's been advanced, known through the long march through the institutions. So we're talking about generations of Americans and people that have been inculcated with this horrendous ideology throughout the entire world right now. So we're steeped in this. There are a lot of people that buy into this phony version of justice. And so just to keep that in mind, that what we were witnessing there in that church is none other than the rotten fruit of Herbert Marcuse and Marx, and that is it, and also what underpins international law and the rules-based order, which is basically they just get to invent things as they go. There is no higher law. There is no real, actual grounded reality that they operate from. And so, so just wanted to throw that out there.
Yeah, I was showing the article. Oh, that's for later. This one, coexist does not mean tolerance. Right? Mm-hmm. This concept of tolerance is so confused today.
It's the inversion.
Loving your neighbor does not equal tolerance for lawlessness. And this is a new article that was released today. Was it somewhere earlier today, right?
Yeah.
Coexist does not mean tolerance. Now, this is going to be a little bit of a historical look for you at why, or what, where this really originated from in the United States. And yes, all roads do lead back to the Soviet Union, but even further than that, they lead back to British elites, Marx, Engels, this idea of how do you bring down a nation from within? Now, this article, I'll read the beginning of this article that Summer wrote and put out today. A great deal is happening at once. Multiple forces are actively working to convince the American public to distrust the Trump administration precisely as it begins disentangling the United States from Fabian Marxian globalist control structures. Be discerning, right? Because Christians are certainly in the crosshairs now. The goal is not policy debate. The goal is emotional manipulation. They're banking on the world and Americans themselves being persuaded to hate America, to see sovereignty as extremism and self-government as instability. In fact, even as living out your life as a Christian, obeying the laws of the land as oppression, as extremism. The Christians are the extremists now. Summarize. So this is coordinated narrative warfare. If they can turn the public against its own nation, resistance collapses without a shot fired. You guys need to check this article out. It's very good. It'll give you the background on how the idea of peaceful coexistence, which is something, a term that Nikita Khrushchev used, said, proclaimed, we just want, we'll have a peaceful coexistence with capitalism. There's a big problem with that. It was in reality a subversive operation to gradually, almost imperceptibly, it's like boiling the frog. People in America didn't even realize it was happening to them, to transform Western capitalist societies from within, Christian societies from within. For Americans, particularly, the goal was to make the people comfortable with the idea of communism as an equally legitimate system that was no threat to their liberty. In fact, it is true liberty to be communist. But in reality, communism is the antithesis to the principles of American liberty: unalienable rights, private property, and self-determination. Communism is not merely an economic or political system. It is a whole world and life view. In fact, it is a religious-like view. It is an eschatological, that means end times, ultimate goal system aimed at one ultimate goal, and that is bringing about the inevitable and final utopian, properly dystopian, world order, the triumph of global communism. Therefore, the suggestion of peaceful coexistence from any communist or any street protester is always a lie. Fundamentally, necessarily, it is a lie. Coordinated perception shaping operation has been successful within America, and you can see the rotten fruits of that on the street today. As the Trump administration disrupts entrenched globalist governance frameworks, the public is being conditioned to equate sovereignty with chaos and national self-interest with moral failure. The objective is simple: delegitimize America. Delegitimize the concept of unalienable rights, personal responsibility, self-government, by manufacturing hatred toward the nation itself. This is not accidental. It is strategic. In fact, as the article goes on to say here, this was the plan all along. From 1917, Lenin's ascension to power in the Soviet Union, Soviet-style world domination began as irregular, non-military warfare, just like color revolutions, just like street chaos. By the mid-20th century, the project had been systematized into an operation known as active measures. If you want to know more about that, this is the project. I'm not even sharing the tab. There we go. If you want to know more about active measures, you can see this in the footnote at the bottom of this article. Active measures, briefly, was the operation more directly coming from Yuri Andropov in his reign in the Soviet Union, to go in. It's social engineering. Active measures is social engineering, to go inside a culture and demoralize it. And once they're separated from God, then they'll be easy to destabilize, right? You see that happening exactly out of the mouths of Don Lemon and the protester here who invaded the church. They are demoralized. They're very easy to destabilize. A long game of psychological, cultural, and institutional subversion based on the 2,500-year-old teachings of Sun Tzu, designed to make a free society unravel itself from within. We can see the rotten fruits of this in the streets, many cities in America right now. Nikita Khrushchev deceptively popularized the term peaceful coexistence, elevating it to doctrine in the mid-1950s, not as a commitment to peace, but as a tactical shift in warfare. We call it fifth-generation warfare, irregular warfare, non-linear warfare. It just means you're not using guns and bullets, you're not wearing uniforms, you're going to corrupt a nation from within. also, we had this little piece that went up yesterday attached
Read
to
that next paragraph though, Brad, because I really feel like that helps drive home the point.
Okay. Okay. All right. But where do I start?
After the Nikita deceptively popularized peaceful coexistence, elevating it to doctrine in the mid-1950s, not as a commitment to peace, but as a tactical shift in warfare. And then the next paragraph under. You just read it.
Okay.
Under the picture. Yeah, there it is.
I've just lost my spot. Okay. Can you maybe you can read it?
All right. Following Stalin's death, he deliberately reframed Soviet grand strategy around the principle that the USSR and the capitalist West would avoid direct military confrontation while engaging in comprehensive competition across all other domains. So ideology, economics, technology, culture, diplomacy, and global influence. This shift did not represent a retreat from conflict, but rather a redefinition of the battlefield, inaugurating what would later be understood as, again, the long march through the institutions rather than an overt march of armies. This doctrine was formally unveiled in the 20th Congress of the Communist Party of Soviet Union and became a cornerstone of the Soviet foreign policy throughout the Cold War. So again, peaceful coexistence never meant peace with capitalism. So this article lays out for you how this whole movement of coexistence and tolerance is just yet another layer. We've been talking to you guys about this concept along the way, but this is another layer of showing you how it's been institutionalized and the origins from which it has come from. You know, who was incubating this idea, and the fact that it's been so systematically institutionalized to subvert ordered liberty and ultimately to take down, any Christian nation. It's primarily targeted at Western civilization and Christendom. So this helps to drive that argument home for you guys. Really, really encourage you to check it out.
All right. Yeah. Definitely check this out. There's a lot of good historical information here to lay the foundation so that you can understand really what's going on. It even goes on into Fabianism, which is another way to transform a free nation, a constitutional republic from within, slowly through policy over time, so that they don't even realize it's happened. You see that? You see the Fabian Society's logo there, right? That's a wolf in sheep's clothing. And one of their early logos was the turtle. To do it slowly, deliberately.
Right. And again, and that's what we've talked to you guys about recently. The Sustainable Development Goals are a result of this Marxian Fabian system, right? Because it's only sustainable if you have a certain amount of the population that's bought into this underpinning of social justice, right? And it's not even that you have to be, believing in these things at the radical end of the spectrum. Like you might be able to say all of the trans rights stuff and all of the, more radicalized versions that's like the stuff that's going to be like to the average person off-putting. But there's so many different, there are more subtle layers in which they've gotten the population to buy into this whole alternate morality that's untethered from God's moral law. So
exactly. Okay, so this is Jake Lang. We've shown you him here before. He seemed to be his presence in Minneapolis seemed to us to be odd. Now he's from Florida. He was one of the J6ers, one of those who was arrested at the Capitol on that fateful day. Spent some time in prison until pardoned by Trump. So I don't know. It's just the things he says, the way he says, they're intentionally inflammatory. He's making claims as a Christian, and in one of the other the earlier protests in Minnesota, he was carrying around a big cross, and well, his tactics don't really fit with what we would call a righteous resistance. It's he's using the same tactics of the enemy. But now he was in Minneapolis yesterday. This was last night, I believe. I think, is that right, Summer? Where he was attacked, and as he described, it was almost torn limb for limb. You can see right there, they're ripping his clothes off of him.
Yeah, I mean, well, the important thing to note is, okay, how is the establishment using it? And so, like on Fox News is where it was reported, and so, and then of course, like he gives some inflammatory responses. Like he said, I was literally lynched by an anti-white mob of liberals and illegal immigrants. I'm at a hospital now getting staples in my skull, nearly ripped limb from limb in Minneapolis. So he continues to write. Let's see. While Jacob Fry and officers in Minneapolis police stand down so they could watch me beaten live on national television, President Trump, send in the National Guard. They are lynching white Christians in the streets. Okay, so
well, he wasn't
that's
lynched.
like,
for one thing, he wasn't lynched, and I was saying that you went there and you weren't preaching the gospel. You weren't there in any kind of righteous resistance. You went there to stir it up, and I'm not sure what you expected to have happen to you there.
Right. But and the problem is he's out there speaking as if he represents Christianity, and then the news gets to run with it. So, obviously he seems like some sort of agitator, like a woke right agitator, somebody like a Candace Owings, who's placed in there, just to disrupt things and to make everybody else look bad in that camp, so that we will automatically be dismissed, kind of thing.
Yeah.
And then there was another guy who supposedly, I don't know, like as far as I know at this point, I didn't look since earlier this afternoon, but there was another guy who had apparently somebody took the flag and beat him on the back of the head, and blood was drawn, and he left into a parking lot and just basically like escaped. And then somebody was trying to help. I'm not sure if that was with Jake. It might have been with Jake, that supposedly there was a bystander, a good Samaritan, that tried to help, and then they were beating that person's car.
Yeah, I've got the story here. I can share the story right quick, because there is an interesting point to be made here about that. Since you brought that up, there we go. I'll look into that here for just a second. He says, this is NBC. Of course, they qualify him as a right-wing provocateur, and I would not disagree with that classification. That's how he is behaving, as a provocateur. See, this is why you don't want to give the left what they can use against you. Righteous resistance doesn't look like that. The pastor in the church today looked more like righteous resistance. We're here to worship Christ because this city needs Jesus. That's a righteous resistance. Now, don't get me wrong. Sometimes violence is justified and it must be used. And that, in terms of the Insurrection Act, perfectly justified right now, because these people they're out of control. They're able to move freely and do what they want. There's not enough police there to stop them. Anyway, a right-wing provocateur who was pardoned for charges tied to, I guess the point I'm trying to make is, lawlessness is ruling in Minneapolis right now. And lawlessness must be put down. The government is instituted by God for that purpose, to restrain evil. It's evil that goes into a church, to interrupt it, to shut it down, to make their point about other lawless people who they feel like they must defend on some twisted moral ground. Anyway, Jake Lang, pardoned for charges tied to the J6 attack on the U.S. Capitol said he was stabbed during a pro-ICE rally outside Minneapolis City Hall last night. Quote, "I just got stabbed today in Minnesota," he said on his X feed, alleging he was attacked by a counter-protester. NBC News could not independently verify his claim, and Lang did not immediately respond to a request for comment. So Jake Lang is 30 years old. He is a conservative influencer. He ran for Congress in Florida, I think, summer, if I'm remembering that right. Says here he served 4 years in jail for alleged crimes in connection with J6, which they're calling it an attack. He was hosting an anti-immigration demonstration with a small group of ICE supporters when hundreds of counter-protesters converged on the scene. The anti-ICE demonstrators and a group of reporters surrounded Lang and his associates.
Right.
They didn't call them protesters.
All of this is very inflammatory. It's like they're calling them Nazis and all of this kind of stuff, and it sounds absolutely horrific. And if you're just somebody who doesn't really follow watch the news and know who all the characters are, then you're kind of going to be, sideswiped by this and think that this is particularly egregious. Like, you're not going to understand, like, this guy Lang and he's just been a questionable character and looks like he's an agitator on the other side, like just somebody that's placed there to agitate. But it doesn't really matter, because all the mainstream media has to do, all the establishment media has to do, and all of their influencers that are out there on social media, they just have to create the hate craft, right? So that's where we bring up our reminder to everybody that we are being, the whole operation is a Marxist Maoist style cultural revolution that's being run on the United States right now, and across the West as well. But in the United States right now, we're going through a cultural revolution. It's a Maoist style cultural revolution, and it's engaging us in hate craft. So it's agitation propaganda, made to make us be very angry and very frustrated with one another. So they've got that's one of the most frustrating things about this whole thing, is it's so blatantly obvious, more than usual, that we can see how our institutional media houses are really just giving purposefully inflammatory takes. So telling the truth falsely and being right wrongly, and that the reaction is the real action. So just, wanted to ground everybody and realizing, how to interpret, well, what is all of this going on around us right now? Because for sure they want to balkanize the country. They want to split up the different states. You see this going on in Canada. They're talking about, people in Alberta and Ontario, they're talking about splitting off. That's part of the plan. The plan is to try to get the country, the states to shatter, so that they can, make people groups more vulnerable, and then sell them snake oil salesman deals with like what we've talked about before, Cardano, things like this, like, oh, you're going to get all of your rights back in your little autonomous universe, that you're going to be in your digital commune, to where you're going to get your safety and security there. And then all that really is doing is enrolling you into the digital ID system. So all that said, still there is reason to hope, because it does seem that there are people in our government and the Trump administration that are making an honest, valiant effort to try to cut the head of the snake, to make sure that these things start falling apart. Like, they're trying to get rid of their illicit capital, like what they did in Venezuela. As much as people want to focus on regime change, or they just did it for the oil, it's a lot bigger than that. And it's not under the definition of regime change. That's not actually what has happened there. They didn't do that. And it's much bigger than that. It's about going after the illicit capital that is part of this globalist communist system that's trying to take down the United States U.S. Constitution. And in the midst of that, now they've got all of their little cells, their comrades around the country, and they're trying to agitate everything and distract from all of the fraud that's happened in Minneapolis. And then, of course, while the thing with Greenland is going on, it's making everybody feel very angry with Trump about Greenland, even though what Trump, I think, recognizes, what you can actually see happening, is that he knows that he's taking a stand that we no longer have allies in Europe. we no longer have allies in NATO. It's not what it was. So we're actually trying to position ourselves against an incoming war against these people that were supposedly our allies, who've actually been robbing us blind for years, extracting wealth out of the United States and the taxpayer here.
Yeah, the reason that we can say that, I mean, they are officially our allies, but the problem is, as J.D. Vance made very clear last year, this was last February or March, when he was, it might have been at the last, this was in Davos last year, actually, when J.D. Vance.
I thought he was speaking in Germany or something, but maybe I'm wrong.
It could be that, yeah, but it was last winter, after, in the first of the year. Yeah, it was something like that. It was at a military, it was actually at a NATO gathering. Yeah, that's what it was. You're right. It was in Germany. And he was very clear that we're not allies unless ideologically we are aligned. And Europe has clearly diverged from the original foundation of our allyship, right? They are standing against free speech. They're standing against individual liberty, the idea of unalienable rights, right? They're living by the concept of the rules-based international order, which is the antithesis to natural law, constitutional order, where rights are unalienable that come from the creator. So ideologically, we don't see the world the same way. How can we be allies? I want to show the clip from the two trans dudes. I guess they're actually, they like to be known as trans women, but they're men. But I wanted to read this section that you had written a while back, maybe as much as a year ago, on what you were just talking about. The reaction is the real action. You know, thinking about Jake Lang going there to stir it up. You know, what is the point of of a pro-ICE protest? To go there and fight it out in the streets? The reaction is the real action. One particularly deceptive tactic employed in such movements is summed up in the phrase, the reaction is the real action. That is, the event itself, a protest, a provocation, a destructive act, is not the ultimate goal, right? The protests in the streets in Minnesota going on right now are not the ultimate goal. Rather, they are designed to provoke a disproportionate emotional response or an authoritarian response. So while the Insurrection Act would be the lawful and even the biblically justified response to the lawlessness in Minnesota right now, it is the case that is what they wanted to begin with. Maybe it's not, maybe that wasn't the desire of the protesters, but the people who are training them and activating them are most certainly wanting a result like the Insurrection Act, because their goal is, first of all, demoralization, separate the people from God. Then you can destabilize them. All right. Destabilization has occurred there. Now the crisis comes, and then you take advantage of the crisis, and whatever comes out of the crisis becomes normalized. So the ones who are training the agitators would be very happy for a police state to come about in Minnesota, or the whole nation, in fact. See, it's not always such a black and white deal. It's a bit complex, because you want to always respond righteously. And in this case, the Insurrection Act would be a righteous response to put down this lawlessness. But then comes the hard part, the most important part, restoring constitutional order there. The agitator desires the purpose of all this, of course, as it says here, is transformation, transforming the society, into the end goal, which would be ultimately a socialist order, which is intended, always intended to develop and result in the communist utopia, world communism. So how it works is the agitator desires not just chaos, but to discredit the authorities, to discredit even the law and the Constitution itself. They would like to see the federal government overextend itself, right? They want to see the existing order fall. In this way, when citizens or authorities are goaded into unjust or intemperate action, the revolution advances. So while the Insurrection Act is the just response here, what comes right after that is crucial. This is why we're coming on here tonight and under the premise that America is in mortal danger, because their movement has succeeded in going as far. Remember the 4 stages: demoralization, that's been done; destabilization, happening all the time; crises are happening all the time. And the 4th stage is the normalization part. It's going to be difficult to reverse that process from the crisis back to a destabilization, back to stabilization, back into a remoralization, or what we would call here a revival. That is the only thing that can pull this back from the brink, and God can do it. And this is why we've been very clear to report to you here recently that the actions that Trump is taking to pull America out of these, well, for recently in the news, these 66 international, transnational agencies, agreements and treaties that have to do with the multilateral, that have to do with the international rules-based order, which is really intended to weaken all of the powerful nations, to bring them down so that it can all be under one order.
Right. And you notice the unified chimes of all of the people that are on board with this international rules-based order. They're all now strictly speaking against the United States, and the BBC and the global media syndicate are rallying to do everything they can to make America look as bad as possible. And I mean, this is not a shocker. We knew that this was coming, but it's not a coincidence either that when Trump and the Trump administration has made it known very plainly that we are not going to go along with this, that you guys can't be perceived as allies anymore. And then the Chatham House comes out and declares the end of the Western Alliance. And then when Mark Carney goes and says things like New World Order when he goes to China and Beijing, they are signaling that there's a division now between the United States. It's like the United States against the world in a sense. And we've been a huge, obviously the United States has funded all of these organizations for years and years. It's a big responsibility that it even exists. I mean, we give billions of dollars to this. It's ungodly amounts of money, but now that has been cut. Plus we went and did this operation in Venezuela. And so they're very, very angry and upset, and they're scrambling. But you know what? They have the advantage of all of their media syndication. They have all of their news pundits and their social media influencers. And frankly, they've been indoctrinating people through the UNESCO curriculum. So they've got a lot of people that believe and buy into their moral framework, unfortunately. And so we're now standing at a moment where it is literally the battle for who's got the moral high ground.
Yeah, that's right. Let's play a couple more of these clips, because this is going to show you the spirit behind the movement here. Check this out. This is from RJ Talks' YouTube channel.
Trying to kill me. The mob is trying to.
I just want to check once again. Is that audio coming through?
I can hear it. It sounds like it's a little bit removed, but I can hear it.
It's not right. It's something not right here, but it was these two men complaining about. There you go. I'll just play it for you.
Horrible people that apparently I'm sure a lot of you guys do know about.
No, I don't see it on the screen though.
Yeah, that's right.
I see Twitter still.
Run up to
there
our
it is.
He's like, "Can I please get in? Can I please get in? Like they hurt me so bad." Da 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 da. That's all the context we have. So in our heads, it's like, oh my God, like, was he just attacked by ICE? Like,
we thought ICE was after him, so we're like, okay, whatever, like, hop in the freaking car real quick. And then all of a sudden, there's a whole bunch of people coming here and storming us and, like, beating up the car, ruining the car, pulling this dude out. Like, what is
like,
going on?
Surrounding the car from every single angle. And yeah, we had no idea what we was getting ourselves into. It's just like, we saw an injured man, so, like, obviously we're going to help because we're not bad people. What?
We're not bad people. We're good people.
And I don't know him. And so, yeah. Anyways, he gets in our car. Like, yeah. Surrounded us. They broke a tail light. Was banging on the car, whatnot. They tried to rip him out the door. Like, they was, like, opening the door. And
so I don't know if they're talking about Jake Lang here, but one of those who was attacked last night, apparently they're saying they're the ones who took him to the hospital.
Yeah. It was one of those two. I think it was Jake.
But this is really telling. It's fascinating and disturbing all at once. Because this is what normalization looks like.
Right. Like you can tell the sort of archetypes that they favor and they cast in a favorable light, and then the archetypes that they cast in a demonized light, you know, and
yeah, very confusing, you know, because they're helping out the one that apparently their side is supposed to hate. But of course, as Jordan say, but we're not, but we're good people. And by what standard? It's a good thing to help out someone who's being attacked in the street. There's no question about that. And praise God for his common grace that people are able to do good things.
Wild. And so we do drive because, like, we're not gonna, like, literally the longer we sat there, the longer he fought them off and the more damage was happening to Aaliyah's car. So we had to leave with him in the car. Like, there.
So there's that part. Yeah, well, this
right, like we didn't want to save him because that was the right thing to do because he was a human being made in God's image, but we had to get out because the car needed to not be destroyed, so we had to keep driving.
Yeah.
Do you see what was just communicated there?
Yeah.
I mean, so in other words, he's worth being, you know, because of his views that he holds, we should have just left him in the street, but we want him, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I mean, it's crazy.
So always keep in mind, folks, this is very important right now. The reaction is the real action. You cannot respond to being provoked. Christians, you absolutely cannot respond to provocation. You can't respond in kind. There's a righteous response. To stand firm for the rule of law is good and necessary. We should support our officers in upholding peace, arresting the violent, and prosecuting lawbreakers justly and without penalty. This particular article is about the sheriff in Florida, who Summer was writing about, who had responded to the provocation with his own rhetoric. But when public rhetoric crosses into the realm of retribution or signals a willingness to bypass due process, we must pause. We answer to a higher authority and live by a higher standard. If we as citizens cheer such statements as, I'm not going to go back and read the article, but this was about the sheriff who had made an inflammatory statement, but we can apply this to what we see now. In our criticism of Jake Lang's actions there, and of course we pray for the guy to recover. I'm not sure to the extent of his injuries, but nevertheless, if we as citizens cheer such statements uncritically, we may unwittingly contribute to the normalization, the fourth stage, of unchecked state power. What is cheered in one context may be turned against us in another. History teaches that police states often rise not merely from top-down imposition, but through popular demand in the midst of fear and instability. Let's be clear. It's not weakness to insist on the righteous application of law rather than emotional retaliation. Christ himself demonstrated strength through composure under provocation, under the most severe provocation. He rebuked evil without becoming evil. And as his followers, we are called to do likewise. We can and must reject the dialectic trap set by revolutionaries. We uphold the law without becoming lawless, love peace without being passive, and resist evil without compromising the gospel. Proverbs 29:11, a fool gives full vent to his spirit, but a wise man quietly holds it back. And I think the pastor demonstrated that. You could see Don Lemon tried to provoke him and said, please don't push me. He came into his church. I didn't see the pastor push him anyway. I think he was trying to keep him back from him. Anyway, the enemy wants chaos. The reaction is the real action. The enemy wants overreach. He wants a reaction. So let us not give it to him. All right. A righteous response is what's required of us. And another article here that's another excellent article from Summer over on her Substack back from July of last year. Darkness cannot drive out darkness. The prize tactic of the enemy seeks to bring about a toxic reaction. I'll share the Jim Dennison quote here. Darkness cannot drive out darkness. Pray for God to redeem. And in this case, we want to pray for the protesters, that the Lord would move in their hearts, would change their hearts, would regenerate their hearts, fill them with righteousness. Pray for God to redeem tragedy and chaos by using it to expose the deadly dangers of political animosity. Hate in speech becomes hate in action. Condemning those with whom we disagree dehumanizes them, which is exactly what they intend, and incites violence against them. If we don't want what happened today to happen again tomorrow, we must heed the words of our Lord. Love your enemies and pray for those who persecute you, so that you may be sons of your Father who is in heaven. It's a very important point to make right here. And that is this. If you don't have the ability to bless your enemies, then you don't have the blessing of God resting on you. This is where a righteous response to invasion, insurrection, war, even, that's where it comes from. For example, the whoever murdered Charlie Kirk. Let's assume it's the one they're showing us. We want to pray for that person's soul. And then we want him to be executed according to justice. For example. Now, Summer shared with me also a post from Pastor Rich Bitterman, which I'm going to, here it is. I'll go ahead and share this one too. This was an excellent way to think about what we saw in Minneapolis today. And thank you, Summer, for finding this one. This is what we need to hear right now.
Praise God.
Another line crossed. Minnesota. Protesters interrupt service at city's church when protest entered the sanctuary and the lamp was tested. Now, keep in mind here, the lamp and the lampstand represents God's authority given to the church. You see, Jesus in Revelation talk about removing a lampstand from a particular church because they had apostatized. Today, a church service was interrupted by protest, and what should have remained a place of worship became a stage for confrontation. Operation Topple the Status Quo.
And if you just want to click on that post right there, it'll open it up for you.
There we go. Okay. Yeah, here it is. Let me get it a little larger so the folks can follow along. There are places a society instinctively protects, and today a church was not one of them. Pastor Bitterman writes, we had just closed our Bibles at Cedar Ridge Baptist. The final amen had been spoken. We had opened Zechariah 4 this morning, and I had preached it with the conviction that this world is not friendly to the light, that the work we are called to do will often feel impossible, that the church will stand, not because it's large or loud, but because it is lit from above. Then, hours later, I saw it, a church in Minnesota, Cities Church in the Twin Cities, had its service interrupted by activists. Protesters entered during the worship. A live stream caught it. Don Lemon was there. The sanctuary was turned into a confrontation space. And the outrage, the confusion, the noise, it all went viral. They were targeted over a pastor reportedly connected to ICE. And no one's been able to explain what that connection is yet. Public records do link that pastor to a leadership role in immigration enforcement. So maybe he is a minister to law enforcement. Who knows? It'll come out. But what unfolded was more than a debate over paperwork. It was the interruption of worship itself, and that is what deserves to be addressed. What I had preached that morning suddenly felt less like exposition and more like dispatch, as if God, by his providence, had dropped a flame from heaven to remind us again that his lamp still burns. Very important point. Whatever is going on around us, whatever is happening, might not be ordained by God, but it is certainly being allowed by God. And we need to know why. We need to pay attention to that. Wake up. Zechariah had fallen into a kind of slumber, the fog that settles in when discouragement clouds your eyes and the work of God feels stuck. So the angel returned, shook him, woke him up. And what did he see? A lampstand. Gold, 7 flames, 7 channels of oil, and 2 olive trees, one on each side, pouring oil through pipes into a bowl that fed the flames. I'm sure you can understand the imagery there. No priests refilling it, no hands adjusting wicks, no bustle or sweat, just the steady, quiet miracle of light, born of oil that never stops flowing. What is this? Zechariah asked. And the answer came like a sword sliding from its sheath. Not by might, not by power, but by my spirit, says the Lord of hosts. The people of God had returned from exile. They had rebuilt the foundation of the temple and then froze as work halted, as the enemies circled. The site lay silent for 14 long years. Zerubbabel, the governor, stood at the front of a project that looked more like a tombstone than a promise. Maybe you know that posture. 2 worlds feel too loud. Your church feels too small. You look around and see outrage getting the microphone and faith being shoved out the side door. And you wonder if the flickering flame in your own soul is enough to keep going another day. You hear the chants as you watch the footage. You watch the sanctuary turned into a battlefield. And then the mountain looms. Too much, too broken, too far gone. But the voice speaks again. What are you, O great mountain? Before Zerubbabel, you shall become a plain. The lamp in Zechariah's vision, it was not powered by hands, not sustained by muscle. No man stood behind it, sweating to keep it alive. It burned because God fed it. The olive trees dripped oil because the Lord had ordained them to. This reminds us that the people of God are not self-lit. It's not by our power, ever. We're not preserved by votes or volume or visibility. We are lamps that burn only because the oil flows from above. Christ is the tree. Christ is the root. Christ was crushed to release the oil. And the Holy Spirit, the fire from Pentecost, still flows from that crushing, still fills the lampstand, still lights the flame. The sanctuary may be stormed, the live stream may rage, the noise may shake the walls, but the fire burns still. What drips into those bowls in Zechariah's vision is not just imagery, it is blood and it is cost. It is the Spirit of God poured out because Christ was first poured out, body broken, breath given, curse carried. There is no flame apart from that cross. There is no strength apart from that Spirit. And if you do not yet belong to Him, if all you have seen of Christianity is noise or politics or hypocrisy, I plead with you. Look past the mess. Look at the lampstand. Look at the oil. The flame still burns because the risen Christ lives. The invitation still stands because grace still flows. You are not too far gone. You are not too late. The church shines not because of its people, but because of its Savior. And this section, I think, is probably my favorite. There were those in Zechariah's day who looked at the rubble and laughed. They said the work was nothing, the effort was wasted, the foundation meant failure. But the Lord rebukes them in verse 10, saying, "Who dares despise the day of small things?" God rejoices to see a plumb line in Zerubbabel's hand, because God sees the finished temple even while the stones are still scattered. He sees the flame even when it flickers. He sees the church even when it is ignored, ridiculed, or shouted down. The 7 eyes of the Lord roam the earth, and they see. Now, 7 eyes, symbolism there is 7 is the number of perfection. It means the Lord sees it all. God's attention is not captured by noise. It's drawn to obedience that continues, to Scripture opened again, to Christ preached without protection, to repentance that costs pride, to endurance that refuses to quit. It is drawn to the church that remains. Zechariah's final question is wise. He doesn't just accept the vision, he presses further. What are the 2 olive trees? What are the branches that drip the oil? And the answer: they are the anointed ones, the priest and the king. In Zechariah's day, Joshua and Zerubbabel. But all of it is pointing to the one who would come and combine the priesthood, the kingship, and the prophetic office into one blazing person, Christ. He is the tree. He is the supply. And if the lampstand stays close to him, the oil will never run dry. But if we move the lamp, if we drift, compromise, bend, or bow to gain the world's permission, then the lamp may still stand, but the flame will die. Stay under the oil, near the tree. Stay close to Christ. Christian, hear this. These disruptions will grow louder. The headlines will grow stranger. You may find your worship interrupted, your faith misunderstood, your convictions called dangerous. Around the world, the church already knows what comes next. This was not the suffering our brothers and sisters endure elsewhere, but it was a sign that the shelter once granted to worship is thinning. When worship is challenged, the answer is not volume or vengeance. The answer is steadiness. The church gathers, prays, sings, and submits itself again to the word, trusting that light does its best work when it's not trying to win the dark, but to shine in it. But none of this surprises the God who spoke to Zechariah. He has seen 1,000 mountains crumble. He has lit lamps in darker times than this. and he will finish what he started. The final stone will be set. The temple will rise. The fire will never die. And when it is done, we will not say we built it. We will say grace, grace to it. And the flame will still be burning. So we encourage you to check out that Substack, Pastor Rich Bitterman, Daily Devotions from a Rural Pastor in the Ozarks, in Missouri. One verse, one story, one prayer.
Chat as well.
So subscribe to Pastor Rich Bitterman. Support him. Follow his work. It's exactly what we need to hear today. All right. We would like to remind you also to check out our Substack. A video and an article here about the left. Why is the left so violent? You know, how and why American leftism became a violent religion of rage and resentment. Here is, if you want to get to the article, to Pastor Rich Bitterman's Substack easily, go to this article in our Substack. Summer has set it up there for you very well. Again, we read today from the article, coexist does not mean tolerance. And there are others which we haven't gotten to yet, which are that have to do with Donald Trump's withdrawing from all of those multilateral, transnational, globalist institutions and treaties. One of our senators, a senator from New Hampshire, Senator Jean Shaheen, went to Denmark and talked about how, we just have to restore sanity and order to America. You know, we have to get rid of Donald Trump. We have to wait him out. And then, you know, at the midterms, you know, we'll have the legislature back, and then we can limit him. We can restrict him again. So she's just telling the people of Denmark, just hang on. He'll be defanged soon enough. Of course, Mark Carney went to China a few days ago, cut a deal with Xi Jinping there to buy a bunch of their electric vehicles, a bunch of their electric cars, cheap electric cars, which could destroy the auto industry in Canada. Not a good move. Many people in Canada are upset with this move. He also announced a new world order while he was there. I think it's important to point out that he's certainly not talking about the new world order that we always talk about and refer to. He's referring to something new, something different, something that they don't seem to have a plan B. So he's making his own arrangements. They love that term, though. Also from this week, the Chatham House, which is a think tank in the UK that advises the government there on what they should do. Chatham House declared that the Western Alliance is dead. That would be that international rules-based order. It's what we call the New World Order. That's now looking like the old order. And this is very interesting. Summer put this article together, and it's got the video of, I can't remember her last name now, Summer. It's, Bronwyn Maddox. Director, Chatham House director, Bronwyn Maddox. Describing the problems, proclaiming that the Western Alliance is dead, blaming Trump for all of it, taking no responsibility for how Europe has taken advantage of the United States over many decades now. It's probably 80 years that this order has been effectively operating. This article, when Trump's withdrawal from the 66 UN linked bodies, is a good thing. You can see this video was also released today on YouTube. It's available with an article and some more details beneath it here on Substack and more. Here's one we're going to get into this week. I think the myth of of the American decline is breaking. It is the position of many people, many wise people, that when a nation does what the U.S. is doing now, or what what Donald Trump is doing for the United States right now, that signals that nation's decline. Well, we have an argument against that. The only thing that would ensure our decline would be to remain entangled with the international rules-based order. And of course, information on the globalist darling to take over Venezuela, Maria Corina Machado, what she stands for, who it is that is behind her, and why it is that Trump is not supporting her. She is a puppet of the same international rules-based order that he is withdrawing America from right now. So please check out our Substack. Summer works very hard on this every day. And we'd love for you to come there, subscribe, and you'll get, whenever we put out an article here, you'll get that in your email. And you can also download the Armor of Truth mobile app and get an alert for everything that we do, wherever we go live, and when we release new articles or podcasts. So, Summer, unless you've got something to add, I think that's probably a good place to leave it. Let's just remind everyone, this is the time to pray for the nation.
Yeah.
All right.
I do want to say one more time, a great deal is happening at once.
Still there, so
can you hear me?
Maybe her audio is out. Oh, there you are. I've got you back now.
All right. Am I back? Can you hear me?
If you're there, I've added you back to the stream. Okay, just jump in if you have. All right. Well, I'll leave you with this. Just to remind you on, again, what Pastor Bitterman said is really all that needs to be said. But we want to remind you, woe to those who call evil good and good evil. That's the difference. We have two rival moral orders battling it out on the world stage now. In fact, battling it out in America, on American streets right now. And the big problem is with leaders in America, particularly those in Minnesota and in the city of Minneapolis, who will not, they won't punish lawlessness. They won't even identify it as lawlessness. That brings God's judgment every time, directly to those leaders themselves, because they will be held to a higher standard because they have, God has allowed them to have these positions of authority. And it will look like judgment on the streets. But just remember, as Pastor Bitterman said, it's not in our grandiose efforts. It's not in our words or vengeance. It's in the small things that we do in the name of God. That's what works. So don't feel like that because you're far removed from it or because you feel small. Never underestimate the power of the church's prayers. And right now, Americans should be praying for this nation to remain standing, to remain strong, because this is the nation that has protected the gospel, protected the church. I know there are many off and wrong versions of Christianity in our midst here, but the remnant stands. And this is the place where it took hold stronger than at any other time in history. This nation is worth praying for, particularly for that reason. So that's there you go, Summer.
I'm back.
There you go. Yeah, sorry about that.
Yeah, Dell said that he could hear me, but you couldn't hear me. So for whatever, it's
yeah,
okay.
sorry about that. Yeah, it looked like you had to go out and come back in, and instead of adding you back, I added the shared screen back. So I don't know what I was doing, but
that's all right.
Still trying to figure out how to work this remote setup we've got here, but hopefully the show was helpful for you and you guys heard what you needed to hear today.
Yeah.
Anything you want to add, Summer, before we head out?
I was just going to reiterate once again something that I've written that's in the article and in the notes on Substack, that a great deal is happening at once, and multiple forces are actively working to convince the American public to distrust the Trump administration, precisely as it begins disentangling the United States from Fabian Marxian globalist control structures. And I'd like for you guys to be discerning. The goal is not policy debate. The goal is emotional manipulation. They are banking on the world and Americans themselves being persuaded to hate America, to see sovereignty as extremism and self-government as instability. This is coordinated narrative warfare. And if they can turn the public against its own nation, resistance collapses without a shot fired. So please take a leap of faith and try to judge each action with proper weight. Like, keep an eye on the press releases that come out of the White House. Try to go to primary sources and form your own opinion. Don't just go to these people that are out there, like, don't trust us, like, go to the primary sources and weigh the information yourselves. And Brad and I work really hard to do that every single day, almost 24 hours a day. I mean, we are totally watching everything like a hawk. And we really do believe that there's reason to hope that this administration is actually divided, that they are really trying. There are good people that are trying to save this nation right now. And if all the things that they're doing are undercut by a bunch of pessimism and naysayers and people doubting, and plus God can work in any situation. So we are not past the Rubicon, and there are reasons to hope, and just wanted to pass that along, because there's so many there's internal forces and foreign forces through social engineering that are totally geared toward dividing us and to making us decide that our nation is not worth saving, that our nation can't be trusted as a player around the world to bring about peace, But basically, if America falls, we've all heard this 1,000 times, then basically that's when we're going to all be cut from God's moral law and order. And that is not going to end anywhere good, guys, So we have to keep going, even it seems really stressful and things are what they are in this moment, not to lose faith.
Yeah, that's well said. It reminds me of the imagery of when you're in the middle of the ocean in the boat alone, and the Lord is able and willing to pull you to safety, but he won't do it until you throw the idols overboard. That means you have to put your trust in him. As Summer said, don't trust us. We're not trying to lead you to us. We're trying to lead you to the Lord, to the truth, which is found in his infallible truth that you can find in the scriptures. Test all things by that. All right. Well, God bless you, my friends. We'll see you here again very soon.
Grace and peace. God bless you guys. Thank you.
As early as 1928, the communists declared that the racial differences among our people constituted the weakest and most vulnerable point in our social fabric. By constantly probing and straining at this one spot, they calculated that eventually the cloth could be torn apart and that Americans could be divided, weakened, and perhaps even set against each other in open combat. The average American, they say, soft and decadent. He'll become paralyzed with fear and panic. He'll run away and hide and do nothing to interfere as they strike at the community's power centers. Any all-out revolution must create a state of crisis wherein almost all of the male population would be forced to remain in their homes because of its affluence. It has waxed soft. The motive force behind its life drive is its endless pursuit of prestige, conspicuous consumption, and sensual pleasure. After the stage is properly set, America could be brought to her knees in 90 days. Ladies and gentlemen, the organization behind these preparations has almost unlimited financial resources. Our enemies are deadly serious about their task. And it's nothing short of national suicide for us to continue to ignore their plans and their progress. The strategy calls for the quiet conversion of our government. They have one and only one solution for all problems. More government, and then more and more until it's total government. In 1943, the following directive was issued from party headquarters. It read, "When certain obstructionists become too irritating, label them after suitable build-ups as fascist. Label them as fascist or Nazi or anti-Semitic, and use the prestige of anti-fascist and tolerance organizations to discredit them. In the public mind, constantly associate those who oppose us with those names which already have a bad smell. The association will, after enough repetition, become fact in the public mind."
Because I don't hate anybody. Now I want to see every single solitary person on this earth. I want to see their souls saved. Every single solitary person. And each and every one of us that calls ourselves a Christian should pray vehemently for their souls, that we would see them in heaven and forget about all this when we get up there.